Hey guys, so I just got something pretty exciting. I thought I'd unbox it for you. I've been doing a lot of unboxings, but this is going to be more than just that. I'm going to do an unboxing, and then I'm going to do a little more to it after that, just to show you kind of what it's like. So, as you know, I'm a big PlayStation fan. I have all the consoles. I have the PS1 through the PS4. I have the PS3 Slim and the PS2 Slim, also PS2 Fat, and I have a PS4 Pro Spider-Man edition. So I thought I would do a video because I'm really excited for the PS5 and I just can't wait. I have one pre-ordered and I'm waiting on it. And I thought, well, how fun would it be while we wait to take a look at the controller? So I ordered this off of Target. These are released kind of limitedly. But I originally ordered one off of Walmart, and I was going to go pick it up the day of, and then they ran out before I could even order it. So I had to order one to be shipped to me, which turned out fine, because, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to do with this yet. So, as people know, this is the Dualsense controller. I have not touched one of these yet. I haven't handled one of these yet. So I'm excited to see how they feel compared to the other controllers. Now, like I said, the first part I'm going to do an unboxing, and then we're going to do kind of a comparison to the other controllers, which I know everyone does, but I think it'll be fun. So my first initial reactions, then we'll do comparisons, and then I'm going to try to hook it up to a few things and just kind of show you how that is too. So why don't we get right into it? So these are about $70. They're kind of expensive. Controllers have just gone up higher and higher. However, they have more technology in them. So as you can see here, it's called the DualSense now. They used to be called DualShock. I have one right here. This is the PS4 controller. This one's a well-used one. As you can see, it's shiny. My original one was like matte black, and then I had the original one that didn't have the light bar here because they added, with like the second generation of PS4 controllers, they added a light bar up here as well as here. So it just shines through in the front so you can kind of see colors. My original one, I think I smashed playing a fighting game at one point, which I don't get that angry about that kind of stuff, but I was playing Injustice or something and it bothered me, and I just kind of went, but this is my, this is still kind of an original one. Now they're called DualSense. They have haptic feedback, which is kind of like in phones nowadays, where it feels like a real thing. Like it feels like whatever you, like a button, if you're clicking a button on a phone, it feels like a button. And so that's kind of what that is with the rumble on this. They also have adaptive triggers, which a lot of people have been talking about. Basically, there's a motor in the triggers that give tension for certain things you do. So springs, and if you're pulling a bow back, it'll give you tension to the trigger. So I'm excited to see that. I was just looking at my Switch because the vibration is kind of like an HD rumble from the Switch Joy-Cons. However, I've heard these are much more accurate than even that, which those are pretty impressive. So this is what the back looks like. Has a built-in microphone. I know there's a mute button on the controller, but there's a lot of other fun things. So let's just crack it open. I'm really excited to feel a PS5 controller for the first time. Even though we don't have the PS5 yet, I'm excited to see how these are. So let's take a look here. Ooh, these are actually kind of hard to open. Let's see. The stickers aren't that bad, but the wrapping around it is kind of tough. Ooh, it's that new, opening up a new thing. I love opening up new stuff because it always has a fun feeling of excitement of like, oh, I can't wait to see what it looks like for real. I can't wait to, the tangible holding it idea. Okay, so off to the side, we're gonna open this. So when you get in here, you have another box, and it looks like, does it just slide out? I didn't realize unboxing this would be so difficult. There we go. I felt it slide out. Ooh, so there's the second box here. Just a white cardboard box. So we're going to open this next. Foam insert. Alrighty. So this is it here. Let's take it out of its packaging. Alright. So this is the Dualsense. This is the newest controller for the PlayStation 5. I'll do a little quick rundown of kind of what I see on it and a couple... I haven't felt it yet, so it's kind of cool. So you have... It's pretty much the same as the other PlayStation controllers, other than the color, and it's a bit bigger, and the buttons are in the same place is what I'm really trying to get at. So you have, you know, your D-pad here, and then you have your cross. They call it cross, I call it X, but X, square, triangle, circle. You have your share button and your menu button, or I don't remember what they're called now. You have your, obviously, your analog sticks. The home button is right here. It's the one in the middle, and then there's a mute button down here, this little white button here. And so far, just the first impressions, it feels really good. I'm really excited to try out some games with it. I feel like the buttons are really clicky on like the actual face buttons, which didn't always feel that way even with a new PS4 controller. The one other thing I like is that these are smooth plastic. When the PS4 controllers came out, it felt really good when you first got them because you could feel the triangle and the square and the X. But they would wear over time, and then it felt like you had a cheap controller. So I'm glad they just went with a straight, like flat face button. Clicky L3 and R3 controllers. These are the ones that have the adaptive triggers. So they, what they'll do is, like I said, no one's tried them except for people who actually have used a PS5 yet. But when you are pushing down on these, there's a little motor in here that can tell what you're doing. And so I know for a game that comes with the PlayStation 5, Astro's Playroom, when you're kind of like a spring and you can hold this down to jump, there's a lot of tension in the spring, and then it doesn't let you push it all the way, and then it'll release and it gives off that tension, which is cool. I'm excited to try out the rumble. Right here you have the touchpad, which was on the the DualShock 4, the PS4 controller. It's a little bit bigger. They got rid of the light up here. They just have a USB-C port. Now, one thing to tell people is this does not come with a USB-C charging cable, because I think they assume that you're going to have one of those. So just keep that in mind. You're going to need a USB-C, which you're going to want one of those anyway because it's becoming a universal standard charging wire. So you're going to want one for, you know, most phones have them now besides iPhones. Switch controllers, you know, the whole shebang. The Xbox Series X controllers are going to have that, so it's worth having anyway, but and they were much nicer to have, so there's that. There's no light here though, so I'm told when you push this it will light up. I think you just need to kind of get them connected and plugged in first, but still clicky here. Touchpad still works. One other thing I really like that's a minor thing, there's no sticker back here. With the DualShock 4s, there's a sticker with your barcode on it, and they always got kind of gross and started to peel up while you're playing, and it didn't feel seamless and smooth. So, yeah. But that's all I'm going to say for this segment. Next up, I will compare this with the other controllers in PlayStation's history. I have all of them, so we should be able to take a look. Hey guys, so I'm back. As you can see, it's nighttime now. I wanted to take some time to play with the controller and kind of get a better feel for it and give some opinions on that. And then I'm going to do a comparison of the other controllers. Now, I know this isn't a new thing. I know everybody has been doing this. They've been taking the new controller and putting it up next to the other one. So it is nothing unique, but if you haven't seen it yet, it is kind of interesting, and maybe I'll have some of my own opinions on it as well. But I have been playing this off and on for the last couple hours, and I played it on PC, and I played it on PS3. A couple things to know. This is also something a lot of people have been kind of mentioning in their own videos. This controller doesn't work for PlayStation 4, which is kind of weird. It only works for PS3, which is even stranger. But I'll give my opinions on that. And then also, it works on PC, but for right now, it only works on Steam unless you do kind of modding. So just know that ahead of time. If you're going to pick one of these up, don't expect to just plug it into everything and it all plays. That will naturally not happen with even after this has kind of been out for a while, but I would assume that we'll be seeing this working with more PC platforms like Epic Store and things like that. So bear with me on that. And obviously the gyro controls with the triggers and the rumble, the new rumble, also don't work yet because we don't have, the console to play that. So it does work very well though on Steam. Now, when you install it, it has to be wired for one, USB-C. It has to be wired, and you have to kind of finagle with it at first. I always think Steam's kind of a pain to get controllers to work on besides Xbox. But with this one, really, you detect it as a PlayStation 4 controller, and then you can button map everything to the way it needs to be. And I finally got that to work, and it works pretty well. I played Portal, I played Bioshock, I played Nidhogg, I played Cuphead, a lot of games like that on this, and it worked very well. So if you have Steam and you want to find a new controller for that, and you're excited for the PlayStation 5 and you just want something to pick up before, this might be good for that. Otherwise, it's coming with the console, so don't worry too much. And yeah. So my thoughts on it are, I need to get used to it, I think. Playing with the PlayStation 4 controller, the DualShock 4, this one does feel a little strange. For my hands, I don't have very big hands, so maybe that's the problem. This is a little bit of a bigger controller, so it's going to just take some getting used to. I really like it. I like the quality of it. It feels really premium. It feels really like you'd put it in your new like minimalist house, and it'll fit right in. But there's something about the ridges here, right where the palms of your hands go, that something juts out and kind of makes my hand cramp. It might just be I'm not used to it yet, and so that's and that's kind of a nitpick for me because I don't think any controller I've ever used has ever been perfect in that sense. So I think I'll get used to that. The triggers and the buttons and everything feel about the same. I like the face buttons a little bit more on this one. They click just a little bit more. They're just a little more satisfying. And the one thing I really don't like about the Xbox One controller is how mushy these buttons are. Even the DualShock 4 has really good buttons, but these ones I feel like are even better. The directional pads feel really good. They feel about the same as they did on the PlayStation 4, the DualShock 4. The triggers, you can tell there's more to them. You can tell that they have an extra motor in them. That's not a bad thing, because they don't work yet. I don't know what that feels like, but you can just tell that they've put a lot of effort in these. I can see these not really getting squeaky. They just feel like there's just a lot of mechanics behind them when you push down on these. The bumpers, I guess that's what you can call them, the bumpers, they feel clickier, which is good. I like that. And I think that they work very well. The touchpad's pretty much the same, just bigger. I like the light more on it now. And I haven't used the mute button yet because it doesn't work. Now, another thing that just reminded me of that, though, is on the PlayStation 3, the home button, the PlayStation button down here, that doesn't work for the PlayStation 3. So everything else works perfectly fine. You can plug and play. You can connect it through Bluetooth, so it's wireless. But you're going to want to have a PlayStation 3 controller on hand so you can control the home button menus. For some reason, this just doesn't want to work that way. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit deeper. And I'm going to go kind of through the history just a little bit, just because I never get to use these, and I'm kind of excited to show them off a little bit. Obviously, you have your classic original. This isn't even a DualShock. This is just the original controller. As you can see, there's not even there's just the directional buttons, and the buttons are the same on top for the triggers. we've come a long way since this. This is pretty hard to use now. It's fun when you're playing retro. It's like if you use a Super Nintendo controller, because if you don't know, I mean, obviously Sony and Nintendo were going to partner up and make the Nintendo PlayStation with Sony, and that's where you kind of got this idea, is if you remove this and you remove these and make them a little bit smaller, you have the Super Nintendo controller almost. So that's where the idea came from. Honestly, though, it doesn't feel that bad still. It still feels pretty good. So I don't know. It's very simplistic now, and it's really hard to play with just the directional buttons. I was playing Metal Gear Solid on the original PlayStation, and that one's about as far as I can go without needing something better. Good thing is there's a lot of backwards compatibility with these, and I don't have the PS1 controller with the analog sticks, but I do have the PS2 controller with the analog sticks. Now, funny thing about this controller is brand new. And the reason it's brand new is I got it for a really good deal off eBay, and it is a real PS2 controller. It's not an off-brand. I got it in the box. I think I posted it on my Instagram. I still have the box, and I opened it as if I bought it back in 2002. So it feels really good because it's just like super, it's not mushy, it's very responsive. So yeah, that's really good. The only differences that we had with this, besides the analog sticks, which were on the newer versions of the PS1 controller, is we have an analog button here, and I think this was also on the PS1 as the PS1 controller as well. So it's all pretty similar. Has rumble. Obviously it's wired, but it has the same plug on it. See, that's why this is still even tied up, because I haven't even used it yet. But it has the same plug as the PS1 controller, so you can play this on the PS1. You can play the PS1 controller on the PS2. And for the time, I remember I loved this. I didn't really think about it, but I loved this controller. Lots of Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper. The PS2 was my favorite console growing up. And I just loved it, and I loved the controller. I thought it fit very well. Then later on, you got to the PS3, and they were talking about having all these really crazy looking controllers and the boomerang and all that they talk about, the infamous boomerang. But then they kind of backtracked in last minute. They came out with the DualShock 3, which is right here, and it's pretty much the same, right? It's the only difference. This is also brand new. I've only used this a couple times. There are a few differences. There's a home button, which I was talking about earlier with the DualSense. But there's a home button, wireless. It's a mini USB, not even a micro USB. This is a DualShock 3. This isn't a 6-axis. Originally, they came with the 6-axis, which had no rumble feature, so it's super light, and it had it just felt like nothing. This one's a little heavier because it does have the rumbles in it, but it also has the 6-axis, so you can control it this way, and it's stupid. But I was okay with this. I didn't get the PS3 until later in its life cycle because I did have an Xbox, and I decided to get this when I got the Slim, and it was it was on sale pretty much. And I just remember not really being bothered by it because it was the same thing. Now, compared to the Xbox 360 controller, that controller was really good. So going into this and playing some games, I did feel like there were a lot of problems. I felt like the sensitivity was kind of funky in certain games. I felt like it wasn't as precise. I felt like I couldn't ease into the joysticks as much as I could with the 360. But overall, I was okay with it. But just like everyone else, I think everyone felt like, come on, come out with something new. So these two controllers are funny. These the DualShock 2 and the DualShock 3, because they're brand new and they're kind of hard to come by now. So it's kind of cool to have pristine controllers to compare with. Then they came out obviously with the DualShock 4. Now this one's a little more worn. As I was saying in my last video, or in the last part of this video, it's been well used. This is supposed to be matte. I do have a red one here, which is not nearly as used as this one. This one was my second controller ever for the PlayStation 4. I got it after I broke my other one. The one thing I didn't mention about the DualShock 3 is the triggers. Instead of them being just buttons, they were analog back here. And they have these little lips on them here where when you push down, they were kind of springy and your finger would slide right off on them. So they solved that with the DualShock and a lot of other things by giving it a little bit of a lip on the back here. This is one of my favorite controllers I've ever used. I've never had a complaint really with this controller besides a couple things. One thing I mentioned in the last part is the sticker on the back. I hated how it came off all the time. It would get kind of, it'd feel like lamination when it was starting to get kind of bent too much. I hated that feeling. I felt like it did wear fast. It didn't ever feel cheap for the time. Like it always felt, I remember when they first announced it and showed it off and people started getting this early, I was like, man, that looks premium. And it is still, but it does feel, it still feels like a game system controller. The DualSense really does feel like it's something from like something that you would buy for a massive entertainment system as a DJ or something. It just feels really premium, and this still feels like a console controller. I love this more than the Xbox One controller. I love it more than the Xbox 360 controller. I've been really happy with it. The touchpad wasn't utilized too much, but it kind of became a good menu button, so you could have, you know, your share button, your pause button for your saves and your options, and then you could do this for opening up your map or whatever that would be. So that worked. The touchpad itself, not really used. It just felt really good. The one complaint a lot of people had is the light bar right here, which felt kind of distracting, and I do remember sitting at like kind of wanting to get like a movie theater experience with my controller with the game, and my controller just lit up so bright, and you could dim it, but it wasn't that you couldn't turn it off or anything, so that was kind of annoying. My favorite part of this though was what I mentioned in the last video too, is when they added the little light strip here. I liked that more than the actual light bar here, where basically the light bar lit up, and this is just transparent right here, and it'll light up and show that light through there. And I think that was a lot cooler, and you can tell they liked that because of the DualSense now. They changed, you know, start and selects, but the comparisons between the DualShock 3 and the DualShock 4 are pretty obvious. And when you look at them, you can tell they really put more effort into this. This was an afterthought, kind of a last-minute change from they're kind of trying to do something new, and this is like they put a lot of effort into it, and you can really tell it just overall. It's hard to go back to this now. It really is. Not only does it feel cheap, but it also just is not meant for human hands. I don't think this definitely they took that into consideration, and it just really feels comfortable. And I you know, if they did with the PS3 if they did with the PS5 what they did with the PS3, and they just had this with just a couple minor improvements, I would think it was lazy, but also I wouldn't really care because it does feel really good. And so then that's where we get to the DualSense, which you can tell they took a lot of ideas from Xbox. Speaking of, I do have an Xbox One controller right here. You can tell where they kind of took a lot of the ideas. The finish feels the same. I do remember getting this, and as much as I'm not a huge fan of this controller, I do really like it. Felt premium as well. It felt like, I keep going back to simplistic house. If you have something that you don't like to have a lot of clutter and you just want to have one little thing sitting here, this looks really nice up against, you know, on a shelf somewhere. It doesn't look ostentatious or anything. The one complaint I have about this controller is I do think the Xbox 360 controller is more comfortable, and my bumpers went out in like no time. So like this bumper here, the right bumper, it just doesn't work half the time, and that is really annoying. And these controllers are really kind of hard to take apart and leave them to look nice if you do that, so that sucks. But you can tell that Sony kind of took some ideas, and the finish feels similar. The light, so you have the light bar that I was talking about from the PS4, but it's right here. You have nothing here, which I love. I love these buttons because the one thing about this that does feel a little ostentatious is they still kept the colors of the buttons, which I think is cool. I don't have a huge problem with it, but like I said, if you have something that's like a minimalist house where you don't keep a lot around, you just have a couple lights and a nice, you know, shelf, this sticks out more than this does. This is all white with the clear buttons and just the black and white with the simple light going this way. They even with the home button, you know, it kind of stuck out a little bit on this because you had the white PlayStation logo with the circle in the middle, and this just blends right in. That's another complaint I do have, though, is the center button I feel like it's harder to access. And maybe it's because of my small hands, like I mentioned earlier, but I just feel like every time I want to push this, it turns into a more of a strain. I had a harder time finding that button. But the joysticks feel really good. They feel smooth, way more quiet. And then you have... And then you have the Xbox. It's just like no comparison. So that's kind of nice that these aren't as loud. So that's cool too. They kept the same kind of idea with the triggers, but you know, they obviously are more advanced, but they still have the lip that goes up, but they feel a little less rough. They feel really nice and smooth. If I turn it on, which it's connected to my PlayStation 3 right now, it lights up. There's the lights that I've been talking about. Same thing as the PlayStation 4 controller, is the light turns orange when it's charging. So that's kind of cool. And I'm assuming it's going to change colors when you play as well. I'm really happy with it. I'm really excited to play more with it. I'm excited to get the PlayStation 5. I mean, this has been a nice kind of... I got this to tie me over pretty much because I wanted another controller anyway, and I knew I was going to want more than one. And when I found out you could get these now, I was like, man, I want to get one because it'll give me something to mess with for another little over a week until we get the actual consoles. So that was kind of the main reason for all of this, and I'm really happy that I had decided to do this. I think Sony really took everything that people have liked and disliked and put them all into this. When it comes to dislike, they knew not to put that in. So the light bar on top, but having a little bit of something on here that's a light is nice. Having the buttons, you know, nice and kind of simple, but also, you know, very responsive. Not having a sticker on the back, just having it labeled on the back. And then one thing a lot of people have been mentioning too, which is kind of a fun touch, is the texture that makes up the back, which, because this isn't all smooth. The front's kind of a smooth plastic, and on the back it's kind of a rougher to grip it. The grip kind of plastic, the grit in the plastic is made of square, circle, X, and triangle. So that's kind of a fun little touch too. The one thing that I am a little interested in is how to take this apart, which I'm not going to do until one of these goes out, or until I have a bunch of them and I have one worn out that I'm curious about. But I am a little curious because the PlayStation 4 controllers are really easy to take apart. You just have screws in the back and it kind of just comes apart. This one, you can tell they really tried to go minimalist, and they don't have any screws that appear anywhere. I did watch Spawn Wave, and I did notice that this black piece completely comes off. So I hope it's not a pry system idea like the Xbox One controller, because I hate that, because I just have a bunch of, like, where you could tell I put the flathead screwdriver in. But, you know, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's what makes me happy, too, about the console itself, is the console itself seems easy to take apart enough to get dust out. I've never taken apart my Xbox One because it requires you to pry it apart. So that's the other thing I don't like. But, yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it. I was thinking about maybe playing and showing you some games, but you can do that with many other YouTubers, and there's really not a whole lot to it. Besides installation of the controller on your PC or on your PlayStation 3 or whatever. But as you can see, it is connected through Bluetooth to the PS3 because the light stays on. I haven't tested the battery life, obviously, yet. I haven't played enough of it, and I haven't charged it fully yet either. But I'm curious to see how that works. But yeah, there's one other thing before I go. There's a headphone jack still, which is awesome. I don't have that even on my phone. And then there also is a little reset button on the back here. It's very tiny to completely reset the controller, which they had on the other one as well. But if you do want one of these, you can try ordering them through Target or Best Buy or places like that, and they'll ship them as soon as they get them. If you're not getting a PlayStation 5 yet, or if you haven't been able to pre-order one, I wouldn't suggest picking this up on its own yet. I just don't think it supports enough. I don't think there's enough here for you to say it's worth it. A lot of the value in this controller is going to come later. It's going to come after you're able to use the features specifically for PlayStation 5. And I'm excited to do that as well. And obviously, I'm going to be doing an unboxing of the PlayStation 5 when I get it. Hopefully, I get it on the 12th, but who knows with shipping. Right now, it may be a couple of days late. But regardless, I'm going to do a video, an unboxing, and we can go a little bit more over this controller when I have everything else here, and we can get the real features looked at. But yeah, like I said, if you don't have a PlayStation 5, if you're not intending to get one yet, I would not get this just because it doesn't support enough yet. I would assume down the line it will. But if you're getting a PlayStation 5 and you're like me and you're just looking to find something that'll tie you over for another week or two, get this, and you'll have an extra controller when you get the console, and you can mess around with it and kind of get used to the feel, and it just gives you kind of more hype, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this controller, if there's anything that you want me to discuss, leave a comment down below and I can get back to you as soon as I can and give you a little bit more help on whether it's troubleshooting or you just are curious if there's something I didn't show you or anything like that. I can help you out there. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys next time.